This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Show. I am Jamie Pags, filling in for Mac, and we have back from vacation, fully rested, kind of, Jack Hirsch, Hall of Fame boxing writer. How are you, Jack?
I'm good. One thing about any vacation, anyone who's ever had any type of vacation can tell you this: they need a vacation to recover from a vacation. Okay, a few people lie around. The concept of a vacation is just a lie. Take it easy. But we have so many of these athletes. Are they putting out 100%? Are they working? It seems like they're on vacation during the regular season.
Tell me
they
about
want to get paychecks without playing, a lot of them.
Well, specifically, you know what? We weren't going to start with this, but since you brought it up, I might as well go right to it because it's in your neighborhood. Yeah, the word came out this week about Ben Simmons when asked about playing against the Celtics in Game 4, just dropped off the chat. Said, nope, I ain't playing. In fact, I don't even want to hear it from you guys anymore. I'm out. And since then, kind of Durant that has been the catalyst on why Durant wants out. That he feels that he is not going to play with Ben Simmons, and nor does he want to, really. And if he's going to stay, he's pouting and, he's taking the ball, he's going home. He wants the coach fired. He wants the GM fired. He wants the team sold and somebody else to buy it. And, all these different things, since he's not going to be able to get traded. That's right in your backyard. What are your thoughts?
I'm a little confused about this whole Durant thing. I don't think we know the whole story. Reportedly, he and Kyrie Irving didn't like Kenny Atkinson, a really good coach. And Kenny Atkinson is Steve Kerr's main assistant now at the Golden State Warriors. He was with him last year, but Mike Brown took the job with the Sacramento Kings, the head coaching job. So Kenny Atkinson was hired by Michael Jordan to be the head coach of the Charlotte Bobcats. And he bailed out at the last moment to stick with Golden State and to be Steve Kerr's main assistant, which kind of tells me that Steve Kerr might be thinking, I got one more year left and then I'm leaving. And Kenny, you're going to take over for me. I just get that feeling, because if you have a head coaching job elsewhere, why would you all of a sudden bail out on it? And then you wonder with Kevin Durant, is he upset over how his buddy Kyrie Irving has been treated? And then there were reports he wasn't happy with Kyrie, but apparently they're close friends. As far as their head coach Steve Nash goes, wasn't he the guy that Kevin Durant wanted and Kyrie Irving signed off on because Kevin Durant knew Steve Nash from Golden State and that's his guy? I mean, so I don't get it. What's happening? Supposedly, Durant now is a little upset because one of the personnel directors who he knew at OKC when he was there, who he was friendly with, who was with the Nets, was let go. But in any event, Kevin Durant's not happy. Pax, I would love to see a team finally step up, and run the full course with a player who demands to be traded, who has 4 years left on his contract, and says, no, you could either play for us or retire and call his bluff. If the player's not putting out 100%, even though he's a superstar, stick him on the bench. Keep him at the end of the bench. If he's disrespectful to the coach, suspend him without pay. And if he goes to the players' union to appeal, let him appeal. Let him keep going to court to try to collect his money. Play it out. And guess what? After a year doing that, that player's going to be going crazy, being on the sideline and all this. And he'll come back, and you let him know, you come back, you come in shape, You play hard, you run the contract. The only exception I would make if a player was ridiculously underpaid. You know, he made a terrible deal with his agent. I might not say, well, you signed a contract, you got to like stick to it for like the next few years, but that's not the case with Kevin Durant. He's getting paid well, okay, very, very well. And I'm not saying Kevin Durant has to be one of the top 5 players in the league. You sign a contract as long as you're being compensated fairly. I don't want to hear about it anymore. And Kevin Durant's problem, Pax, he's not a leader. He's just not a leader. He's a follower. He's a great, great player, but he defers to Kyrie Irving. As distasteful as we might find Kyrie Irving at times, he is a leader. Maybe not a good leader, but people follow him. Kyrie Irving says something, Kevin Durant follows him. Kyrie Irving doesn't follow Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant basically follows Kyrie Irving. Okay, but they have to be following the coach. And Steve Nash, he's basically been a puppet for those guys. And now it comes back to bite him. The guys who he defers to the whole time, those guys all of a sudden, you know, have no use for Steve Nash.
Well,
I'm done venting about my Brooklyn Nets who got blown out.
And you literally didn't mention the one catalyst in all of this, the one who probably is the reason why it all spawned like this, Ben Simmons. You're just leaving him off the list. That, oh, my back hurts, and then 2 weeks after they're knocked out of the playoffs, he's out fishing, you know, deep sea fishing, you know, catching marlins and things like that. And then, you know, literally it comes out that when he was asked to play, not only didn't respond, removed himself from the chat. And of course, he's playing it off because he goes, oh, it must have been a slow news day. Yeah, no, he's just trying to play it off because, oh, yeah, that really wasn't a big deal. It was a big deal. Your teammates are asking you to join them and to play, and you decided to turn your back on them. After they stood up for you, of course, you know, it was a matter of a couple of days.
On the Sixers or the Nets?
The Nets. The Nets. And when I say they stuck up for you, when they came to Philadelphia and he was on the bench and they wound up blowing out the Sixers that game purposely. Durant was on the floor talking to fans saying, you're going to miss Ben Simmons. You're going to miss Ben Simmons. You're going to be upset. You're going to see what you have with Harden, and you're going to be upset about the fact that you made this trade. Do you think we're upset now?
You know, Ben Simmons, I'm not sure what the issue is exactly with him. If it is a serious mental issue, I have sympathy for him. But that's a thing that athletes could also, and I'm not saying this is in the case of Ben Simmons, could use as a crux. They can claim it's a reason why, like a physical injury, you could check. Doctors can find, does he have a fracture? Does he have a sprain or whatever? But mental issues like are so hard, you know, to diagnose. But then again, if Ben Simmons is running around and enjoying himself, that could be a facade as well. After a while, you have to just say to the young man, we'll get you the help you need, but we're not going to pay you for services, you know, rendered because you're not playing, you're taking off. And that's just the way it goes. We only pay for players who are going to play, unless, you know, conclusively it shows he can't play. And if Ben Simmons has to be in rehab somewhere for mental issues, you pay him for that. You don't put the blame on him that he has some serious problems. But if he's going to be having a social life, going out, you know, while he's depressed, we still feel for him, for his issues. We really do. But the Nets shouldn't be paying him. And it seems like Ben Simmons has been able to collect his money. So, you know, there's no need to pay, but you want there to be some character. These are my new teammates. It's like, does he care what they think? I mean, I just don't know. It's a mystery to me because he did play with the Sixers. He didn't really bail out on them, Pax. It was his performance on the court that the fans didn't like. I don't think he ever really bailed out on his teammates, and I don't want to hear that he didn't take a wide open shot against the
Are you?
Hawks.
Whoa. Actually, so forget the wide open shot, because obviously you play how you play. But he decided, because the coach said something, that was very innocuous. Really, it wasn't a big deal in terms of that. He decided that he was disrespected and didn't want to come back. So much so that the team was trying to go out there to LA to go try to help him out and get him back on board. So, and he was like, "No, I ain't taking your calls. I ain't listening." And then I'm gonna claim myself out. But then, right when I find out I'm not going to get my paycheck, I'm going to go to practice. Just show up, because the moment I show up, I'm going to get paid, because that's what he thought. And then he stayed there, and he's not going to play in practice. So I tell you, they are going to wind up doing the Ben Simmons. It's now going to be the Ben Simmons, Kyrie Irving rule. The collective bargaining agreement, the NBA is marking down all of this stuff. And when it comes down to the collective bargaining agreement, when they're going to have this Ben Simmons rule, where where these players, the players lost a lot of ground. And really, the biggest problem with Ben Simmons is that he's got, millenniumitis. He's just lazy, is what it is. It ain't nothing in his head. He's lazy. He likes the money. He likes what basketball was able to get him in terms of contract, but he doesn't want to work for it. He just wants it given to him. And that's the problem. That's why he's lazy. It has nothing to do with the fact that he's got mental issues. The mental issue is that he's soft and that he's lazy. And I'm surprised that, that even his family hasn't gotten in the middle of this. But from what I understand, his family life is a mess as well. So,
I didn't know. I saw a clip. He bought his brother a new car.
Well, he buys himself a new car every other week. So it's not the biggest deal when you're making $200 million. That's why he wanted to go back. That's why he felt it was important to try to sue the Sixers for pay, that he wound up. He couldn't even follow through with that the right way.
But let me tell you, I blame the teams. He shows up to practice but refuses to practice. You know what I would do? I would send him home and suspend him on an attitude saying he didn't come to practice. He made no effort to practice, and not pay him. Withhold his money.
Well, in essence, that's what the Sixers did.
And he's got to put out.
In essence, that's what the Sixers did. They called his bluffs. They're like, okay, you're not here. You're not going to participate in practice. We don't want you here. You're becoming a cancer, and we don't want you here. You got to go home. And if you're going home, if you're not going to practice here, then you go home and you don't get paid. And then he's like, well, I'm dealing with mental issues. And they says, okay, well, that's fine. Then we're going to get you help. And they tried everything they could to work out getting the help. He didn't want to go to the help. I'm going to do my own help. But then he didn't even do his own help. He just was like, okay, I'm fine. I'm going to play video games and hang with my boys and stuff like that. That was the problem. And that's always been the problem. It's called laziness. And it's happened all the way back in college when he didn't want to play in the tournament with LSU because he didn't want anything bad to happen. He didn't want to get exposed as a weak player. And that's what he is. He's a weak player. He's got a little bit going on for him in terms of defense. But when it comes to the spotlight, he shies away. And he would rather be in the spotlight with his girlfriend and all the cars. And he wants all the money, but he doesn't want to put in any of the work. And like I said, the NBA is salivating for this next CBA because the owners are going to be able to take back some of their league because the inmates have run the asylum too long, and the mess that's occurred. Now, they're not going to be able, the NBA Players Association is not going to be able to clean up.
But the teams are not forced to do anything in regard to accommodating the players. In the case of Kevin Durant, he has 4 years left on his contract. The Nets could tell him point blank, we're not trading you. Either you come to work or you don't get paid. And Durant probably will come to work, he'll sulk, he might be disrespectful to the coach. And if he's disrespectful to the coach, suspend him. That you can't talk to coach like that, suspend him 3 games. No pay 3 games, Let him go to the players union. If he's disrespectful again, do it. Suspend him again. The problem is the teams give in to public pressure after a while, or they think to themselves, we want to get something in return. Like with the Sixers, they finally gave in to Ben Simmons, trading him because they didn't want to have nothing for him. They figured they pushed Ben Simmons as far as he can go, and they thought to themselves, this guy might never play for us again. He might be permanently retired for we know, or might take off 2 years and then need the money. And they wanted to do what was best for the team on the court. The same thing with the Nets with Durant. But you got to know the individual you're dealing with. Durant, I think, is more of a legacy player. Simmons isn't a legacy player. He's just a guy who collects a paycheck. I don't think he thinks of his legacy. I think Durant thinks of his legacy. He thinks about scoring, winning another MVP, winning another NBA championship. I think those things are on his mind, the legacy he wants to leave too. So I think Kevin Durant is much more of a competitor than Ben Simmons. That's safe to say.
That's 100%.
Right.
That's the
Right.
one statement that I agree with that you said.
So
Everything else that you say, and I feel like is just making excuses and is a crutch for Ben Simmons. That's what it is. Well, Durant does care about rings because Durant wants to win. Hey, listen, the Durant has got ties to Philadelphia. He's a part owner in the Philadelphia Union who are about to probably win their first MLS Cup. And I know that we don't ever talk about soccer here, but realistically, I mean, so he wants to win and he wants to be part of winning teams. And he went to the Nets with the thought that he wanted to win. He wanted to win his own championship outside of Golden State. And ultimately, now it's all falling apart because of the way, first off, the way it was all done in the first, by the Nets in general, that maybe it would have been better if they stayed in New Jersey, because ever since they went to Brooklyn, it's been as the basketball turns over there. It's like it's been better than Days of Our Lives.
But what gets me with Durant's situation, you hear who he wants to go to. Oh, the teams that he gave the Nets, he's going to go to Miami, Phoenix. The heck with you, Kevin. We're not trading you unless we feel we could get at least equal value to you. And we would tell him you're a great player. It's so hard to get equal value. But if we can get, we feel, a deal that would be equal value, we're going to trade you wherever. If we could accommodate you to where you want to go to, if it's between two teams, we'll accommodate you to the place you'd rather go to if we have a choice in the matter. But if we don't have a choice and some team you don't really want to go to steps up and gives us a great offer, that's the place you're going to go to. But chances are that's not going to happen. And we'll say, Kevin, you got to come back here and play. You don't want to play. You want to retire. Retire. Sit on the sideline. But chances are this is the way it works. The player eventually wants to get paid, so they could pull a James Harden. Harden shows up to Houston to force a trade to the Rockets, overweight, out of shape, figuring, okay, I'm just there to pick up my paycheck and basically go through the motions so he can get paid. It was strictly a money thing, but at least he was there. But he wasn't really trying. I think Durant has a little too much pride to just show up and give a half effort. But then again, that's the Kyrie Irving fact. I think Kyrie Irving, he opted back for the Nets this season, not because he wanted to, because I think he saw he had no other options, at something like $36 million a year for 1 year. He's back with the Nets. And I think Kyrie tries to reestablish his value this year. If the Nets don't trade him, I think he plays hard. He has a great year perhaps, because he wants a long-term deal. And maybe Durant sees, okay, Kyrie's here. I'm going to play with him this year and see what unwinds. But you're right. The players, you could say, are commanding too much power, but then again, the ownership's allowing it. They're always giving in to an unhappy player. And I'm telling you, Pags, even though we've argued about this in the past show, I see the next big superstar in the NBA making a demand it's going to hit close home to you. Joel Embiid. If the Sixers don't win this year or don't make a serious run for the NBA title, if they have a very disappointing year, and it's because in part their attitudes on the team, an unhappy Joel Embiid finally is going to say, I want to be traded. What could you get? I mean, what can you get for Joel Embiid? I mean, the Rudy Gobert deal, that set the market out of whack, Pags. I'm going to tell you why. Let's make believe the Rudy Gobert deal was never made. I would have traded Kevin Durant for the same package, 5 number 1 picks. And then you're getting 2 guys who could start, Patrick Beverley and Malik Beasley on top of that, plus a couple of other players. 9 guys, 7 of quality. I make that deal. And that's for Rudy Gobert. Kevin Durant's more valuable. That's why they can't make a deal. That's why the Donovan Mitchell deal to the Knicks is hit a big snack. The Knicks would be crazy to give the same exact package. What? The equivalent, 5 number 1 draft picks and like 2 starters and 2 other players. I mean, for Donovan Mitchell, I mean, it's a big, big risk. And but the weird part about it, the Timberwolves getting Rudy Gobert, that might actually push them over the top. They might go to the finals for the first time in the franchise history if Pags, I want your opinion of this, if A-Rod doesn't screw things up. A-Rod says he's looking forward to running the Timberwolves. What's your view on that?
I don't really. Obviously, A-Rod's got a lot of money and is going to be able to say a lot. But the truth of the matter is that the best organizations understand delegation, and you put people around you who know what they're talking about and know how to run the operations. And I kind of imagine that A-Rod could be a face of that franchise, but for the most part, he's got to make sure that he has people around him who knows how to run it. And you could take all the credit in the world if you've got the right people around you, and those right people win championships. But if you don't have that, I would. You've said your piece. You say you look forward to running the Timberwolves. Now run them. Now run them so that you at least compete for a championship or get close to it. Make that next step. They lost to the Grizzlies. They played a great series against the Grizzlies, but the Grizzlies wound up on top. So get over that hump. Get to Golden State. That's the first jump that you got to take, or get to the finals. I don't know that they're going to have it like that, and I feel that once you start dealing with certain drama that's going to come around with A-Rod, because A-Rod is also very drama-lated, that it's going to start affect some of the play on the court.
Oh, well, there's already a rumor. A-Rod has links to Seattle through his years as a Seattle Mariner. And Seattle really has been longing for an NBA team. I mean, after, losing the Seattle Supersonics, I can't see how a city like Seattle could have lost their NBA team in the first place. So there's a few whispers that A-Rod might be eyeing the Timberwolves moving to Seattle. If he does that, I mean, A-Rod's level of popularity, I don't know where it would be going to. Now, how much power does A-Rod really have there? Too, he's supposedly an owner making decisions, but we're not sure who's exactly in charge. Reportedly, there's a co-owner, but A-Rod could do what he wants, and I don't know. But it's a good Timberwolf team if you just leave it alone and let it play. But between, Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, D'Angelo Russell, I mean, you have a team that I think, has a great chance of going to the finals, who led the Grizzlies after 3 periods in 3 of the games that they lost. And had they had Rudy Gobert, maybe they win 1 or 2 of those games and the series turns out different. But
right.
We'll never know. We're talking basketball in the heart of the baseball season. You see how these guys tick us off in the NBA packs, the way we got to vent about them?
So I could have cared less. I mean, because I disagreed with a few of your statements, but it's too far to go back now. Although Harden went to Houston, when you were talking about how Harden he went there and he was all out of shape. The one thing about Harden though is that he was always a competitor, even though he was out of shape. I remember watching that year. I specifically because I gamble a little bit, and every once in a while I like taking uh, teams that are out of whack in terms of what I thought was a line, and so I took a money line on Houston against Golden State, one, and Harden in that game specifically, like he was ridiculous, and he was considered out of shape and all that other stuff. He still wound up scoring like 48, including the game-winning basket over top of Curry. And it was like that game wound up like 132 to 130 or something like that. It was this ridiculous thing that wound up in overtime because Harden wound up hitting a three to tie it at the buzzer and then wound up going off in overtime. But he wound up with like 48 points there. So even though he was out of shape, Harden still had enough respect for himself to want to compete. And that even when he went up to the Nets and he wasn't really excited, he was out there and he was playing. And he's a competitor, even though maybe he's not in the best of shape. So that's the difference between Harden and Simmons.
I'm going
Simmons
to tell
don't
you.
care.
I'm going to tell you something, Pax. I never heard anyone compile a list like I'm going to mention. Who are the greatest players who play at their worst in big games? Okay? And if I had a list like that, Harden would be one of the guys at the top of the list, for sure. I mean, whenever there's a big game, he rarely seems to show up, especially in elimination games. I mean, who can forget that game 7 against the Golden State Warriors to see who would go into the finals? I mean, his shooting was horrendous. And this is, one of the great scorers in NBA history.
Well, but you could also go and say that Iguodala had a great game that game. That Iguodala was able to just, he was on him like white on rice. Literally just was and didn't give him any open looks anywhere.
So he's better than Harden.
No, his defense was
Well,
better than Harden's offense in that game.
Harden should have showed his superiority. That's what.
Yeah, but his defense was just better in that one game because Harden kind of owned him most of that series.
People forget certain things, even with NBA history. When we talk of the greatest players of all time, now one of the greatest was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. We can agree on that. I think one of the greatest, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Wherever you want to put him, you put him. But there was a game 7 against the Boston Celtics for the NBA championship when Kareem was with the Milwaukee Bucks. Dave Cowens, the Boston Celtic center, outplayed Kareem in that game 7. I mean, I'm not talking about the rest of the series, but a big game 7, he outplayed him. And when you compare Kareem to a Michael Jordan, it's hard to imagine someone else outplaying Michael Jordan in a game 7. Just a little bit of a thought in that regard. But listen, Kareem is one of the 10 greatest players in NBA history, maybe top 5, maybe top 3. Some people might even say number 1. It depends, where you exact. Listen, another step with Kareem. Wow, and I admire Kareem a lot. Moses Malone got the better of him clearly when the Sixers beat the Lakers in 4 games. At times, it seemed like a mismatch. Now, the numbers weren't too far apart per se, but watching them on the court, Moses just overpowered him in that, in that series. And Moses Malone, for short window, I could argue was the greatest center in history for a very short window, if I want to look at it that way. But, it depends what you want to find, what you want to look at. There's
right.
So
in
many,
that
so
3-year window in 1982, 83, and 84, I think Moses Malone was the most dominant center in the NBA by far. And I liken it to, now I can compare it to 2001 when it was Shaq against Hakeem. Olajuwon. And there's one play that specifically that stands out to me that kind of defined that entire series. That Shaquem Olajuwon was, covering Shaq, and literally Shaq was dribbling the basketball, and Hakeem had all of his weight on Shaq's back, and Shaq still powered Hakeem, like he's got his legs pushed out backwards, got all of his weight up against Shaq, and Shaq still powered his way and got the layup.
But I have noticed your Pags, bad example. Now, even though you're correct on that one thing, I'm sure. Hakeem Olajuwon outplayed Shaq when they went head to head. He generally
not in that
outplayed
series,
him.
though. Not in that series. They lost. They won game one, but didn't win another game. And
I mean,
really, because of a bad
throughout
call,
his
they
career,
probably should have won game two.
Head to head, it was a bad matchup for Shaq on balance. He generally, it's like they say, styles make fights. Hakeem could finesse Shaq. You couldn't overpower Shaq. No one could do that. That's why I think Shaq would have done a great job going head to head against Wilt Still Chamberlain, because he's the one guy who could have matched or even exceeded Wilt's strength, underneath the basket. He wouldn't have to quite finesse him, okay? And I see what you mean. But Moses was great during that window. Listen, what have we got? We got to talk some baseball here, Pax. We gave the NBA the first half hour here. And
hey, listen, we haven't spoken about NBA in a little while, so at least I got it out of my system and out of your system, because I know that you're stuck listening to all this up there in Brooklyn because you're a big Nets fan.
Listen, I'm a rarity. I'm a Brooklyn Nets fan who doesn't root for them to win. That's unusual. Let me tell you why. With all this drama, how can I root for these guys? This dysfunctional organization. I'm kind of, like you have a gym membership, you can't use the gym a while, you freeze your membership. They don't charge you for the time you're not using it, but you keep it and then they unfreeze it at the time. I froze in my net fandom for the time being. I'll go back to being a Nets fan when they get it together. And listen, and if Kyrie and Durant and Ben Simmons get it together, come play hard, good attitude, everything becomes functional, I'll root for those guys and I'll root for them hard. But for the time being, it's just they got to get their act together. The front office, the star players, it's got to straighten out.
Well, I think that it's good to have hopes and dreams, and that you are way off. It's going to be a little bit of time. So you're going to hold that card in your back pocket for a little while, because I don't think it's going to get reinstated for a few minutes. So just my opinion. But transferring over to baseball, because obviously baseball it's the dog days of summer, and now that the trading deadline is passed, the teams are starting to make their moves, and ultimately we could go over the scores. I know I went over them with started up with Keith Engel, but there's a couple of real scores that I am really just going to throw out at you just to kind of get your take. The Yankees lose to the Mariners 4-3, and they have not been playing very well at all, the Yankees. That they've lost 2 in a row. They've lost, 7 of their last 8. And not doing very well. And the Mariners, on the opposite side of things, are doing pretty well.
Baseball season has ebbs and flows. We had a debate show a few weeks ago, and one of the questions was, who has been the most disappointing team to you in baseball so far? And at the time, I said the Seattle Mariners. I couldn't figure out how they're playing so poorly. And guess what? That wouldn't be the answer anymore, because if the season ended, they'd be in the playoffs. They've gotten it together the last few weeks. They've been playing great. The Yankees, you could look at it 2 ways. I mean, they overachieved early in the year. I couldn't figure out for the life of me how they could keep winning. And these things tend to turn around. I never thought this Yankee team was that good. I even thought they'd go 80-82 this year. I thought it would be the first time in ages in close to 30 years, that they 30 years or so, that they would actually have a losing record. Okay, that's how I felt about him. And people are talking about, oh, what the Yankees are doing is historic, the pace they're on. A couple of teams have better records than them right now. And I'm going to tell you, the team I picked to win the World Series, who I've stuck with all along, the Toronto Blue Jays, they're a big 10 games behind the Yankees. But before all is said and done, the Blue Jays are going to start closing in on the Yankees. I mean, this isn't to say the Yankees won't win the division at this point, because we're close to mid-August and they have a 10-game lead. Even though that can be overcome, it's very hard to overcome that margin with 7 weeks or so to go. But they are going to close in on the Yankees. They're going to make them sweat before it's over. And guys were playing over their head. I mean, they had Clay Holmes. He made the All-Star team, and now he can't get anyone out there, reliever. And which makes you think about the All-Star game, Pax. I don't like the selections. Like, as much as I like the Yankee catcher Trevino All-Star game, come on, guys. It should be based on a whole season, not just from a couple. It's basically done for the first 3 months of the year, or the half the season, I should say. You should go back to last year's half season and combine it with last year's second half, combine it with this year's first half, and make it a full season, and base your selections on that. Because too many guys, they just get off to a good start and they're considered all-stars, and they're not truly all-stars. I mean, that's my argument with that. But people forget it's a long season. You, Pax, were panicking early in the year, complete panic with the Philadelphia Phillies. You wanted to give Schwarber his unconditional release. Get him out of here. He's not
first off, actually, I said that I didn't want to sign him. I didn't want to sign him. I didn't want to give him a release. I said I didn't want to sign him. He's made me a believer. Like I said, he's already hit more home runs than he's ever had in his career.
He's a team guy.
He is a team guy. But like I said, I didn't know much about him, and I looked at the numbers. He was a career 240 hitter who happened to get streaky last year to hit a couple of good home runs at the time, and he wound up getting the most home runs he'd ever gotten last year. So was that an anomaly, or is this an anomaly now where he's already at 35 home runs, and he's probably going to hit somewhere around 52, 53 home runs for the season? That's where it's a surprise to me. That's a big surprise.
And that's the big bat they needed in Bryce Harper's absence. The big power hitter there. I mean, he's doing it at a very opportune time. Some players you got to stay the course with. Some you have to move on from. Hoskins, that first base, you got to stay the course with him. The Phillies, as far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't deal him off. Try to make him a career Philly for the most part if you can, because I think he will produce in the long run. But sometimes you don't want to keep waiting on a guy. Listen, the 1969 Miracle Mets had a pretty good pitcher with a lot of potential that they didn't want to wait on. And their manager, when he was asked about this pitcher and his potential, Gil Hodges said, well, some guys have potential their whole lives, meaning they'll never fulfill it. And that pitcher was Nolan Ryan. Nolan Ryan, the Mets moved on from him. Eventually, they didn't want to keep waiting on him, but who knows how his career would have turned out had he been with the Mets the whole time. But chances are he would have been outstanding, going forward. But
sometimes it's the coaching. Sometimes it's just the coach releases something in your brain that's like hitch that you are attached to. So maybe he would have never achieved what he was able to achieve staying with the Mets, that he needed to change scenery. Maybe he wasn't. I mean, as far as everything that I've ever known about Nolan Ryan, that he was always like a Texas, Oklahoma style guy. So being up in the bright lights of New York, maybe never suited him. So going somewhere else, it just releases like, hey, I don't have the pressure of doing this. Now all of a sudden I can start to do things the way I want to do them. And
Oh, so let me get this straight. So the Phillies kind of they think they're such caliber that they release Didi Gregorius. They don't want to wait for him to get it together. A guy who showed he can handle the bright lights in New York. The guy who replaced Derek Jeter. That when Derek Jeter retired, Didi became the shortstop and he was outstanding. He had all that pressure on him. And I don't want to hear he can't handle the Boo Birds of Philadelphia. The guy's been hurt. They should have stayed the course with Didi. He would have
I
been
disagree.
invaluable for them
I
in the long
disagree.
run.
It came down to, so although I am, if when all is said and done, I probably would have tried to keep DD if we had the space for him. That was the problem, that they started to wind up with the logjam. They saw already what was happening, that they were not going to be able to keep. They had to get rid of somebody. And you've got Didi Gregorius, who is, he's still a good player. He's still serviceable. He can go finish his career somewhere else and be used. Yeah, be used. Right now, they needed to get rid of somebody, and he was the most logical choice. Is it great when you only have, hey, listen, when you've got 26 guys that could be on the roster, but you can only keep 25, and you got to make a decision, and you've got a young kid who is going to be maybe the future in that position, or you've got the guy who's creating the logjam, who's not necessarily performing the greatest. What decision are you going to make? Well, they made the right baseball decision. Is it, yes, he could deal with the bright lights of New York. Yes, he did take over for Derek Jeter, but he wasn't the shortstop here that he was even in New York. And that's been for the amount of time that he's been here. So ultimately, they had to give him his walking papers. And that's really what it came down to. I mean, realistically, he hasn't been signed by anybody, right? He's not with the team right now. So realistically, they could still pick him up when they move the 40 man. They could go right back to him. I mean, they designated him for assignment, which means that assignment may be back with the Phillies. But nobody picked him up. So the Phillies aren't the only team in baseball who feels that maybe the game has started to pass him by.
Well, sometimes when you have a player with a reputation who's done it in the past, even though his performances recently might be very poor, another team wants to take a chance on him. Jackie Bradley Jr. was released by the Red Sox. Okay, he was a free agent. He signed with the Brewers. They moved on from him. He went back to the Red Sox, who he had a lot of wonderful success with, especially as one of the great defensive outfielders you could argue that you ever saw. I mean, that's how good he was defensively. So the Red Sox let him go because he couldn't hit a lick. But he was picked up by the Toronto Blue Jays. And that kind of makes you think he's not good enough to stick with the floundering Boston Red Sox, who obviously are very fond of the guy because he has a history with them, yet he's good enough to be put on the squad of the Toronto Blue Jays, a team that would be in the playoffs today if the season ended. Same thing with the Yankees. Joey Gallo was atrocious this year, yet the Los Angeles Dodgers, okay, arguably the prime team in all of baseball, have a roster spot for Joey Gallo, who, by the way, yesterday hits a pinch hitter, hits a 3-run homer. So the
game winning home run.
Dodger brass is probably, I think they were up 1 run when he hit it, but it was the difference. But I think the Dodger brass is smiling now over this Gallo move because the whole idea is, look, he can deliver a thunderbolt because he has a power hitter. We just put him up in the pinch hitting role when we need a homer, take a chance on him. He could still probably field well. Okay. And, so they take chances on a guy, change the scenery that we could straighten him out.
The big deal about Gallo, amongst everything else, and even the Yankees said it, was that he was a great dugout guy, that he was a great teammate to have, and that there are times, for instance, and I'm not going to compare myself to any major league player. However, when I play on a softball team, there are sometimes I play above my means in terms of I'm playing on a squad that's an A squad. I'm a C, maybe D player. So, but I know what my position is on that squad. They'll have me play catcher because I'm good defensively. I'm loud. I can sometimes disrupt the batter, and get, things in their head and such like that. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, I have to be more of the team guy. And I am more of the dugout guy. You put me with the book. You have me go ahead and cheering guys on, getting people excited and stuff like that. Maybe starting the rally when we need it. And that's what Joey Gallo was. And you removed him from the dugout, and since then you have lost you've lost 7 of 8. And you could say that had nothing to do with Joey Gallo. Had nothing to do with the trade for Bellini or Bellatini or whatever his name is, and all of the other aspects of all the different things that you've done with
And
the
Benintendi, yeah.
Benintendi. Yeah, that's
Well,
what I meant to say.
that was a good pickup for the Yankees. Former Red Sox, he performed well for them, and he was an all-star with the Kansas City Royals. It's a nice pickup. I mean, is he an all-star caliber player on balance? Probably no, even though he's hitting over 300, but he'll be solid. I mean, and with Joey Gallo, it started to become toxic. Why do fans tend to usually pick on one player, even when their team is doing great? Even when the Yankees were doing great, they would boo Joey Gallo. Was there any need for that? I'm going to tell you a little story with booing, Pags. I'm so old. I saw Roger Maris when I was a kid in his last year as a Yankee hit a home run. When Roger Maris stepped up to the plate, they were booing him badly. When he hit the home run, they were cheering as he ran around the bases. If I'm a player, do I really care about the fans, or should I? I mean, it sounds like a cruel thing to say because you and I are catering to fans right now, and we care what the people out there think. We want them to think well of our opinions, even if they disagree with our opinions. We want them to be interested in it, even if they're argumentative against what we believe in. But as a player, if you're giving 100% and you're not quite producing and they're booing you, when you start producing, do you want to soak in the cheers? I mean, I don't know. I mean, some players are good at shutting it off completely and not bothering them. And others, like Joey Gallo, New York wasn't for him. He said the fans made him feel like garbage. What are the fans supposed to do in Joey Gallo's case? Myself as a fan, I would have been indifferent. I wouldn't have booed the guy. I wouldn't have cheered the guy. As long as a player's making the effort, he's running balls out, he's trying his best to produce, and if he's not doing it, I'm feeling I don't like it. I only boo a guy when I see a little bit of a lack of effort. I see mental mistakes he shouldn't be making. Then I'll boo a guy. But fans can be really tough, and they go on a roll. And all of a sudden, word gets in the paper: Joey Gallo, this and that. A-Rod got booed when he wasn't quite producing at times as a Yankee, and Jeter was the captain, and they would ask Jeter, are you going to speak up to the fans and tell them to leave Alex alone? Why don't you say something? And Jeter wouldn't do it. By the way, if you've been watching that Jeter documentary,
I have not.
The captain, I've watched the first 6 episodes, believe it or not. I mean, you have a more fulfilling life than me, Pags. You don't have time for this. I managed to squeeze it. And when my grandchildren visited it, I kept ESPN Plus on. I'd see kind of the replay on it right after, and I'd be nodding to them, but listening in. But one of the things I'm going to tell you, I know I'm all over the place now. I'm going on the Jeter thing, but it's related to A-Rod. Jeter's the captain of the team. And the debate was, should Jeter speak up in defense of A-Rod? And Jeter never did. To my way of thinking, you're the captain. It's your obligation to do it, even if you think A-Rod's a jerk. Not that Jeter felt that way, that A-Rod was a jerk, but for Jeter, it was high maintenance. He didn't want to bother to get involved with stuff like this, He likes to be diplomatic, let things pass. But you're the captain. Isn't that your responsibility?
Well, I mean, you have to make a decision on which way you're going to handle it, and by his indecision, he made the decision. And ultimately they wound up winning a World Series because of it. With him. So I mean, really, did he need to do more?
Well, Cheetah's argument was everyone gets booed. You have to work through it. He said, I got booed. Mariano Rivera got booed. But the difference is Cheetah got booed one game and then they cheered him the next game because it got out all over the place. How can the fans have booed Cheetah? How can they be like that? Same thing with Mariano. So the fans realize, okay, we booed you for one game. And then, the next, they were like ashamed of themselves, the fans, in a certain sense, when it was brought to their attention. Who's it? Well, let me think. Let's think of a big Philly icon in history.
Well,
Let's
I mean, we
say
could talk about. We don't even have. Well, Mike Schmidt.
No,
Mike Schmidt
like
going
Mike
out
Schmidt.
with.
Was Mike Schmidt ever booed?
He went out there.
No.
With a wig.
When Schmidt became a true superstar for the Phillies, was he booed and later on in his career when they realized all he had done for the city?
No, but that was before that. But late 70s. I mean, he was hitting home runs. He was always a 40 home run guy. He was by far the best third baseman to ever play the game, and he always kind of was in that category. And so he wasn't like that, but he was getting booed consistently, so much so that he went out there, like he struck out. He put on a wig and a mustache and went out there on the field to do that, which became iconic because of the joke, because that was also part of the cementation of how Philly fans are too critical and boo too much. I mean, you think about this year alone, you had Alec Boehm, who's hitting right now 300, is having, the baseball's become a beach ball for him in terms of the way he's hitting the ball. And, he was getting booed because of his defensive play. So much so that he mouthed the words, I hate this effing place. And now they make T-shirts about it, because at least he owned up to it. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
they were booing him and he owned up to it. And Philadelphians have a very short memory because realistically, it doesn't matter. We are going to boo when we see bad play. But you start playing well, and all of a sudden things change. They were booing JT Realmuto, and now all of a sudden he's hitting 460 over the last month and a half and brought his average back up all the way up in the number 4 spot. And you can't argue with that. You got Castellanos, the same thing, that they had this big deal with. Hey, did you hear the boos? He's like, no, my hearing is broke. Truth of the matter is that they hear it, they know it, and if they're playing great, you're not going to hear it. When you're playing poorly in Philadelphia, you do hear it. But let's go back, and I'll talk about this with Ben Simmons on his foul shooting. When he would go up to the foul line, the fans would cheer him on. We were trying to break the snide. They would do the same thing with Markelle Fultz. We wanted him to shoot the ball. We wanted him to get rid of the hitch that he wound up with. But it didn't happen. And same thing with Ben Simmons. It just, it started to fall apart. And when he turned around to try to blame the fans, oh, the fans are on me because of this and that and this and that. Well, the fans are on you because you made poor decisions, in very critical moments of the game. When you are underneath the basket by yourself and all you got to do is lay it up, dunk the ball. That's all you had to do was dunk the ball. You chose to pass it. And because of that, you didn't score a point. And, we wound up losing the series. And it was on that moment when they knew, that they could go after you because you weren't going to be able to do, you're playing with 4 guys against 5. So they booed him at that moment. But they were always supportive of Ben Simmons. Just like right now, they're very supportive. Schwarber can't do no wrong. Boehm right now can't do no wrong.
I'm going to tell you who's very critical of the Phillies, who really dissed the Phillies something bad, the whole organization. Keith Hernandez, you heard what he said?
Yeah.
Keith Hernandez is a Met broadcaster. He refuses to broadcast any Philadelphia Philly games. He's taking off. You want to know why he's taking off? He's missing a couple of games. One was a good reason because they have a 1982 reunion of the St. Louis Cardinals championship team, of which Hernandez was the first baseman. Excellent reason. You have to be there for the reunion. You want to be there for the reunion. The other game he doesn't want to. You know what his reason is?
You don't like your defense.
They play lousy fundamental ball, and they've always played lousy fundamental ball. He's sick of watching them. He's sick of watching them because they're not what baseball is about, the Philadelphia Phillies. They're the exact opposite of what baseball should be. They don't play the game right. He wants nothing to do with them. He's disgusted with watching the Philadelphia Phillies. So he's not going to work. He's putting in for his vacation day, his sick day, or whatever. He's putting in for a personal day to take off. That's how
you know what I think about. You know what I think about him. So he did win a ring with St. Louis, right? That's what you're telling me, that he won a ring with St. Louis. He didn't win a ring with the Mets, did he?
In 1986.
Oh, he did win a ring with the Mets?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because I don't remember him being so great. And all he is bap, 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 bap. He's just trying to get drama, put drama between the Mets and the Phillies. When the Mets start to falter like they normally do in September, and he's going, oh, well, this team was so great, and now they're not doing so well. I can't wait to when the Mets get beat, whether it's in the first round of the playoffs or they falter so badly in September that they lose their lead, going into the playoffs. I tell you, we all know because we've seen the Mets over the years and how they've reacted. And all he's trying to do is just create, I want to get a rise out of the Philadelphia fans. So I'm going to go ahead and say this. Right now, the Mets and the Phillies are the two top teams in baseball right this second. The Mets have won.
If he wanted to get a rise, he would broadcast the games and maybe say something. He thinks so little of the Phillies, how they play the game. Like, he's kind of disgusted. He's sick of watching them. I'm going to tell you something.
That's what I think about Hernandez.
I don't remember the exact play, but I actually drove to Philadelphia for Rhys Hoskins' debut. Okay, I think it was on a Sunday. It was an afternoon game on a Sunday. And I don't remember the particular play, but I remember there was a miscue on the field. Ball hit in the outfield. And if you broke down the whole play, there were several miscues, like the ball was misplayed in the outfield and the cutoff man was missed. Then there was a bad throw. Then this and that. And you could break it down. And wow, there were like about 4 mistakes on the play. But anyway, that's just Hernandez. It would be interesting if the people who employ him to do the Met broadcast say, Keith, you have to do the Philly game. But he said point blank he doesn't want to know from the Phillies.
You know what? And I can't wait to see them in the playoffs. I can't wait to see him in the playoffs. Let's say you take off for a playoff series. He's trying to make himself relevant. He's been irrelevant for a really long time. He ain't worth even. Who cares that he even does the Mets games?
He just got his number retired by the Mets.
Who cares? That's what I feel like. He's just trying to remain relevant, and he's not. So I'm going to try to say something to rile up Philly fans. That's all it was. And I don't care. Whatever. That's how I feel about it. Because the truth of the matter is, you go ahead and talk about whatever it is. I can't watch the Phillies play defense, but I'll call a Pirates game because they are exactly what Major League Baseball is with defense. Get the hell out of here. Shut up, Keith. You ain't got nothing. You ain't had nothing for a long time. And really, you should be retired because nobody cares what you got to say.
11 gold gloves in his career. They're talking about him maybe as a Hall of Famer now. His name is coming up.
He's not a Hall of Famer. He would be part of the Hall of somewhat good. Not even really good, somewhat good. He's not that. Like I said, he wasn't a big deal back then. He just happened to be, the best of a bad bunch. He was the best of a bad bunch back then. After Pete Rose retired, there wasn't really many good first basemen.
So if you had a choice, Ryan Howard or Keith Hernandez, who might you take?
Howard.
You take
Howard for 4 years. For 4 years, there was never anybody who was better. For a 4-year time span, there was never anybody who hit more home runs, more hits, had across the board, across the board. He was the best player in baseball for that 4-year span. Keith Hernandez could never say that. He could never say that.
No
And
one could take away
he
a
wound up
bunt.
being lucky being on a Cardinals team that wound up winning. That really, he was probably the afterthought, because if I can imagine who was on that 82 team, you had Vince Coleman, you had Ozzie Smith, you had all the guys that played in the outfield out there, that they had a great team. That he was just the afterthought. Then he went to the Mets. Again, he wound up stepping in it because that Mets was a really good team as well. I mean, I think that they had Carter, Dykstra. You had all of that talent,
Oh,
and
yeah,
he was
Gooden,
the afterthought. He happened to be the
Strawberry,
first
yeah.
baseman. He had to be the first baseman. That's what it was. And he wasn't great. It's good that they retired it up in New York, but he'll never be a Hall of Famer. He'll never get in there, because if they decide to put him in there, it becomes the Hall of somewhat good, not even really good.
He
So
just felt he wants to take off. Just one particular reason. He just doesn't like the Phillies style of baseball, how they play the game. That's all it is.
he doesn't like the Phillies. You don't need to talk about the baseball. He don't like the Phillies. He doesn't want to report it. That's really the thing. He's got a disdain for the Phillies, and that's okay. You could hate the Phillies all you want, but you're going to say, oh, it's because of the way they play defense. Let me tell you, you play against a lot worse defensive teams. I watched the Marlins play, not yesterday, the day before, and they were terrible. And I got to imagine, the Pirates, they play poor defense. You go to like the Reds, they play poor defense. Get out of here. Oh, you're not gonna do any of these games. You just have a disdain for the Phillies because the Phillies are coming on strong, and right now the Mets are actually playing pretty well.
Speaking of the Phillies, you know what the National League has come down to, the final wild card spots. There are 3 spots for 4 teams, the way it seems. Atlanta should make it in there. Then you have either Milwaukee or St. Louis, whoever doesn't win the division. The San Diego Padres, they look like they have an excellent chance. And then they're the Phillies. One of them aren't going to make it. One of them, out of those 4. So it's interesting, even though, you intend to keep as many teams in the race as long as you can, it's kind of played itself out. Now they're going to be 3 spots, 4 teams, 1 left out. It's going to be interesting how it unfolds. Of course, there's always a chance one team is going to go on an amazing run out of nowhere and make up 8-9 games in a couple of weeks. I mean, that's always a possibility, but that's what it looks like it's coming down to.
Well, I mean, think about it. I mean, right now the Mets have won 14 of 16, and they're trailed by the Phillies, who've won 13 of 15. So, I mean, they're both these teams are playing great baseball. The Braves have fallen off a little bit. The Brewers are the ones on the outside looking in. It looks like right now that they are faltering a lot. And it looks like the Cardinals is probably, they have actually started to play some really good baseball and are probably going to wind up winning the division. And I think that the Brewers are going to be the team that's on the outside looking in, because I think that the Padres, even though they're reeling, their bats are going to start to pick up a little bit, and they'll win games just by proxy rather than, continue to lose games. And I think that the Brewers are going to be the ones that kind of lose games. Obviously, the Giants are out of it now. It's 6.5 games out of the wild card. And the Marlins used to be a halfway decent team, and now all of a sudden they're out. So the Phillies make the playoffs.
How does a team change so much in a year? The Giants last year were incredible, winning 107 games. They were amazing overachievers, and this year they're under 500. Who's intriguing? If the season ended today, I think the Baltimore Orioles get a wild card spot.
That is exactly correct. They win
500. And if you had a chance to bet on the Orioles winning the World Series in the beginning of the year, I think there were places in Vegas that gave 2,000 to 1 odds, something like crazy odds in the very beginning. Could you imagine putting down $100 to win 200,000? And imagine putting more than that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I'm just
I mean, they
a
still are
long ways to
far
go to
ways
win the
away from
series.
winning the World Series. But let's talk about it. They were probably somewhere around 800 to 1 just to get into the playoffs. I wouldn't have
And
been a
Trey
surprise.
Mancini, so they trade Trey Mancini to Houston, and that's an intriguing thing. So basically, they gave their own playoff possibilities a hit by trading Trey Mancini to Houston. But if he was going to be a free agent at the end of the year, I think he is. What did you get back as far as prospects go? I mean, I always feel hesitant to give away top of the line prospects. I hate doing it unless you can get someone under contract who's been there well. And we don't know how good prospects are. We don't see them play. We read about it and get a feel. Look at the deal that the Mets gave Jared Kalensek. I'm pronouncing his name wrong. The prime prospect in the Met organization. They traded him a few years ago for Robinson Cano and Edwin Diaz. And it looked like a bad deal in the beginning. Diaz comes to New York and he's terrible. Okay. He wasn't the same relief pitcher he was in Seattle. But now Diaz got it together, and you can argue he's the best reliever in all of baseball. I would say that at this moment for sure. And Kalensek, I'm getting tongue-tied, is hitting 124 for the Mariners. You know, he might never pan out in the major leagues, but of course the Mets are on the hook for all that money. They still owe Robinson Cano. So you could maybe argue for Seattle, at least they got rid of that big sum of money they would owe. So maybe it's still a win-win, you know, all around. But you never know with prospects. But what I like with the Yankees, with all their wheeling and dealing, they gave up prospects, but they didn't give up the cream of the crop, you know, the trade deadline. And that's like always an important thing. Like Anthony Volpe is going to be the Yankees shortstop in the future. They wouldn't include him in any deal. You know, the Nationals wanted him as part of a Juan Soto deal. The Yankees wouldn't budge. Kudos to them.
Right. Well, you know, and I understand. And they wound up so the Orioles wound up getting Seth Johnson and Chase McDermott. That's who they wound up getting from the Astros. Chase McDermott actually is, you know, a major league ready pitcher. The other guy is a prospect. So that's, I mean, was it worth it to get rid of Mancini? Probably. You know what I mean?
But Houston is all in now. They want to win the World Series right now. Sometimes you make a deal, and if it means you're going to win, even if you give up a future star, it's worth it if you accomplish your objective and you win. In 2016, the Cubs finally broke the hex and won the World Series. And a big part of that was trading Gleyber Torres to the Yankees for Adonis Chapman, who the Yankees ironically got back. And Chapman was a rental for the year because he was going to be a free agent at the end of the season. And the Yankees ironically signed him as such and got him back immediately. And Gleyber Torres might have a very long career with the Yankees. So was it worth it to the Cubs? In the long run, you know, I mean, they won the World Series. So absolutely, yes. You would trade nearly anyone if it's the difference between winning a series and not. But sometimes you think a little to yourself when it comes to a truly iconic player, he sometimes means more than an extra World Series. Obviously, in Yankee history, if you could have an extra World Series without Babe Ruth, you wouldn't take it. You wouldn't take an extra World Series and not have Joe DiMaggio or Mickey Mantle. Certain guys kind of transcend an extra World Series. You might feel that way. Well, what happens if the Phillies never would have had Mike Schmidt if it would have meant one more World Series? Something tells you we'll bypass that one extra World Series. Let us have Schmidt here.
Right. Well, I mean,
it's not an easy answer.
No, it's not. I agree. It's like you sometimes the player is above the team in that regard because it's one of those players that transcends, that lasts, that goes over the test of time here. You know, because think about this realistically. If you were the Angels, that talk about Mike Trout, would you get rid of Mike Trout to just win a World Series?
Wow, wow, wow. Well, Trout's at the time of his career, he's been getting injured. I'm not sure is he going to come back with a vengeance and be the same Mike Trout. I wouldn't be surprised if he did. I'm not selling him short. I'm just not sure. The Angels are the most dysfunctional team in Major League Baseball to me. I mean, I always sit down at the start of every season and I write down my predictions. The Angels were a nice choice to pick for the playoffs. I didn't do it. I compromised. I wrote down they'd have a winning record. I wrote down the total number of games, but they wouldn't get a wild card position. They've disappointed me too many times, but they look too good on paper not to take a real run at it. And they started the year great, and I thought, oh, I should have picked them. This was the year they finally broke out. Same old Angels. I mean, imagine what the players are thinking. Ohtani is getting sick of this.
Yeah.
Reportedly, they're asking him, and if I'm the Yankees, he's the one guy I give my prize prospect Anthony Volpe, my shortstop, for, because with Ohtani, it's a double-edged sword. The guy can pitch and hit. So
Yes.
let's say moving forward, he's declining in one area, he could still be good in the other. I mean, you're getting a guy who could be a rotation pitcher and a very good one and a good regular, everyday regular. I mean, you're getting 2 for 1. You got one person, but in reality, you're getting 2 different players in Ohtani. I mean, and 2
Right, but
quality
but
players.
the truth of the matter is he doesn't want to play in New York, or else he'd have been in New York already because New York
He had
offers
a
more money.
taste of playing. He had a taste of playing with the Angels. I wouldn't be surprised it crossed his mind. He said, look, Hideki Matsui liked it there a lot. He was a World Series MVP against the Phillies. Thank you. But he might be thinking, Ohtani, let me give it a shot here in New York. I can handle it. I'm a proven major leaguer. He's the one guy, the only guy in Major League Baseball who I see right now. If the Yankees lose Aaron Judge in free agency, which I hope doesn't happen, but I think will happen, if they can swing a deal for Ohtani, he's the one guy who could come in and replace Aaron Judge as a megastar, as the face of the Yankee franchise. You get Ohtani, he becomes the Michael Jordan of the New York Yankees. What Jordan was for the Bulls, Ohtani would be for the Yankees. He would be a megastar, with the New York Yankees.
Yeah, I think he'd be a megastar with wherever he went. So, and it wouldn't necessarily matter about the fact that.
But he's with the Angels. They're not winning. He's not.
No, the Angels are not winning
because they're not winning. There's not the buzz around Ohtani that there'd be if he was around like a winner.
Well, we'll see. I mean, in the offseason, they're going to probably have to move him, or is he a free agent?
I think he might have 1 more year, maybe 2 after, but Ohtani might call their bluff and say, I just don't want to play ball. I'll play in Japan rather than go through this. I mean, we're on the sidelines, Pags, you and I and other members of the media, but they got to eat at some of the players. You lose, because it's a work environment. I mean, some guys can handle it, like the great Ernie Banks, who was on all those losing Cub teams in the 50s and 60s, would show up with a smile on his face, say, oh, let's play 2 today. He'd be Mr. Cub, and they absolutely loved him. But it wears on guys. They get just tired of it. They want the excitement of big games. They're human, and I give them a lot of credit for it. We tend to criticize players, but in most cases, it's more than just picking up a paycheck to them. They really do want the excitement of winning, being called a winner, being called a champion. Even though it's team sports, it's not like boxing, you're the individual champion. You want to be a champion in what you do.
Right. Well, no, and I get it. So everybody goes after, I think initially everybody's chasing the chip, and then as you go on throughout your career, you start to make other decisions that are based more around your life rather than chasing the chip. The competition stagnates a little bit once you start getting paid to play the game. It actually becomes a job rather than, playing a kid's game. And I feel that most players tend to fall into that category, where some players never fall into that category. So, like you think of like Tom Brady. Tom Brady always competing, always falls into that. That the money never really meant as much to him. That it was always about winning the championships and cementing himself as the best ever. And that drives certain people. That drove Kobe Bryant. That drove Michael Jordan. That drove Tom Brady. Those types of guys are rare. That's why there's only so few that we can put in that sentence. Because again, the drive is more than everything else in their life.
Well,
And
some guys handle it. Players always some players handle it a little different. Like Kevin Love, the good forward of the Cleveland Cavaliers, he was a Minnesota Timberwolf when they were losing. He was traded to Cleveland. He won a championship with LeBron James. LeBron moved on, and he knew the Cavaliers were going to lose for a while. But he decided, this is my team. This is my city now. I'm going to stay the course. And I'm going to, play and not complain. And he's been a good soldier with Cleveland. I mean, he's been really a good, citizen over there, plays the game hard. And some guys just decide, this is my city, this is my town. But with other guys, they're realistic. The money's incredible. Like Damian Lillard staying with the Portland Trail Blazers. I'm sure he's fond of the Trailblazers, but he talked about being unhappy, maybe going elsewhere. But then when he got that max deal, a lot more money he could get anywhere else, I'm sure Damian Lillard thought to himself, I'm being given this unbelievable money. I'll just play. Sometimes I wonder why players can't think of the way we do or the way they did when they were kids. You just played the game. There weren't standings. You just played against other kids. You tried to win. You wanted to win. But it wasn't about winning a championship per se. It was just game to game. Go out there and enjoy the game. Try to win the game and, take it from there.
well, I hear you. The truth of the matter, when it comes to Dame Lillard, I think the fact that he got married. That was the biggest determining factor, that his wife is from that area and she didn't want to leave that area. And so ultimately he decided that he was going to stay. That's what it came. And then the injury created the happenstance that's why he's still there and not traded to any other team.
A message to Damian Lillard. If anyone's out there who knows, what are the chances Damian Lillard is watching this show right now? But if someone knows him, have him get in touch with me, because Damian Lillard is a big boxing fan. With all his money, he might want to gently get involved in boxing. So if he wants to know who are the good people he could talk to, but don't put out much of your money, Damian. Just a little teeny bit, just so you could have your toes in the water. Because Damian Lillard's such a big boxing fan. He traveled to Australia to see Devin Haney fight George Kambosos. Imagine that, traveling to Australia. That's how big a boxing fan he is to see a fight. So I respect the fan Damian Lillard is. If he just wants to talk boxing, he could get in touch with me, and I'll be happy to talk with him about it.
There we go. So the invitation's out there to Dame to come on the boxing show, either the Gloved Fist or whichever one, and get some advice on where to put your money for the boxers, so you could get your horse in the race there.
And Damian Lillard too. If he comes on our show, we will not talk basketball at all, outside of maybe how he's progressing, how Portland looks. We won't talk about anyone else. We're going to talk about boxing the whole time with Damian Lillard. So I want him to come on the show. We'll make an exception on Gloved Fist. And we'll have Frank Laterzo, myself. I'm sure Frank will be okay with it. I'll have him on, we'll have him on as a guest.
There we go. So Dame, the open invitation is there. Hey, on that note, we're running a little bit late on having a commercial break. So we're going to take a few minute commercial break, and we'll be back after these messages. We still got some talk about the NFL. There was a report that came out that ranked all the offensive lines, and I want to get your take on it, because there were the top 5 and the bottom 5 have some interesting names. that are interesting teams that have gotten ranked. So it'll be interesting to hear what you have to say on how they
You gave
rank
me
them.
no time to prepare to study offensive lines. All I know, Becton of the Jets, he's injured. He's going to be out the season. The Jet offensive line took a hit. I'm
Yes,
not
it
an
did.
expert on offensive lines.
Well,
Everyone's
you're an expert on just the team names, so you get a feel for that
I
just
get a
alone.
feel. I watch the games and I see who gets sacked, whose running game is stuffed. So I do.
So
have
right
a
after
good
these
point.
commercial messages, we'll come back and we'll get what Jack's got to say about it, because I have something to say about it at least. So we'll be back very shortly, right after these messages.
The Hometown Foundation is excited to bring back the Dream Ride experience, August 26th to the 28th at Connecticut's Farmington Polo Club. Join us in celebrating the accomplishments of our Dream Riders while enjoying live music, a car and motorcycle show, family fun zone, pet adoptions, canine demonstrations, the Fireman's Chili Cook-Off, and much, much more. Get your tickets today.
My baloney has a first name, it's O-S-C-A-R. My baloney has a second name, it's M-A-Y-E-R. Oh, I love to eat it every day. And if you ask me why, I'll say, 'cause Oscar Mayer has a way with B-O-L-O-G-N-A.
Oscar Mayer, the first name in Bologna.
How's that? Mr. Green? Mr. Green,
Yeah.
you need any help?
Mm-mm.
I just want you to know, I think you're the best ever.
Yeah, sure.
Want my Coke? It's okay, you can have it.
No.
Really, you can have it.
Okay.
Coke
Thanks.
and a smile makes me feel good, makes me feel nice.
Be around.
That's the way it should be. I like to see
Hey, kid.
the whole world smiling with me. Coca-Cola as life. Have a Coke and
Thanks, Mean Joe.
smile.
You know, one of the best things about being an ex-big leaguer is getting freebies to the game. Call the front office, bingo. And once these fans recognize me, I probably won't even have to pay for my light beer from Miller. Down it, I love them. These fans know I drink light because it's less filling and it tastes great. Good seats, huh?
You're in the wrong seat, buddy. Come on.
Oh, I must be in the front row.
Come on.
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer, and less.
Good seats, hey, buddy. He missed the tag. He missed the tag.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Supporting the needs of our veterans. That's the goal of all of us at Team AmVets. Like Mitch, Carlos, and Kevin from our Welcome Home team that brings furniture to our vets.
We are Team AmVets.
Or Linda from our thrift stores who brings you great bargains every day.
I am Team AmVets.
And John, who picks up your thrift store donations that support California veterans programs.
I am Team AmVets.
Visit our website or a Team AmVets thrift store to donate or shop today.
Join the team!
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, isn't he?
And welcome back to the Mac and Jack Show. And as I said before we went to the break, we were going to start talking about some NFL. And just to let you know, we have some preseason football that starts tonight. The Giants over the Patriots. I start at 7 o'clock. And then the Titans and the Ravens at 7:30. Do you have any interest at all in these games?
I hate preseason football. I can't stand it. It's a waste of time. I mean, I keep hearing that, oh, well, the coaches need to evaluate players. I mean, even Aaron Rodgers was saying he basically doesn't want to play in the preseason games. He says it makes no sense for me to come in for one series. I mean, what do they think they're going to accomplish? He's going to throw 3-4 short passes and then get out of there? I mean, the players don't need it. I can understand it having some value to the coaches and wanting to make an evaluation. But then again, they know for the most part who's going to be on the team. The number 1 draft choice is going to be on the team. The number 2 draft choice is on. Number 3 is going to be on the team. Number 4 is going to be on the team. Number 5, it starts getting a little sketchy. So you want to evaluate the guys who are drafted 5th, 6th, 7th, a couple of free agents. But for the most part, you know who's going to be on the team, and maybe a couple of the guys could make it as special teamers. Maybe there's a competition with field goal kickers. But to me, it's a waste as a fan. I don't think they're still doing it. I don't believe. Maybe I'm wrong here, Pags. I don't know the answer to this. Are they still making fans buy tickets to those games if they want to be regular season ticket holders? That's what I kind of wonder.
Yes, you still have to buy the 10-game package. You don't get to buy 9 games or 8 games, depending on how, whether you have the home game, extra home game or not. Last year, you had to buy the 2 preseason games for the Eagles to be a season ticket holder. This year, you get lucky with only 1 preseason game. And, of course, it's this first one where we play against the Jets tomorrow night. So
yeah, and what are they giving you? They're giving you basically a glimpse. You know what that is? We were talking about the NBA before. That's like you're giving us Joel Embiid for 3 minutes a game, 3-4 minutes a game. Just let him get his feet wet, and then he sits out the rest of the game. He grabs a couple of rebounds. He's just sharpening up just a tiny bit, but you're not seeing a real game. You're not seeing a competition. Let me ask you, big Eagles fan, do you really honestly care whether the Eagles win or not? I mean, you want them to always win. I'm not saying what you want. Do you care? You really care? Because I don't really care whether the Jets win their preseason games. I want them to win anytime they play. But if they lose, I don't get upset. If the Jets line up for a field goal with the game on the line at the end and they miss it, I'm not upset after. I'm not really
I
upset.
agree. Preseason is preseason, and that's exactly. Preseason used to hold more weight back when there was 6 preseason games. When you played those games and you played like it was regular season, that you could have it was just thought about a lot differently. Now, preseason doesn't mean anything. It really doesn't. And so, for instance, I know that Nick Sirianni said specifically that the starters were going to play 1 or 2 series. And I feel that 1 or 2 series is more dependent on the fact that, well, if the offense goes down and score a touchdown, well, then they don't need to play a second series. If they go down there and go 3 and out in that first series, well, then you want to get them that second series in. And I understand where Rodgers is saying, hey, listen, does it make any sense for me to go out there and play one series, work up a sweat and then get that? Well, the one thing it does for like Rodgers and for quarterbacks is that it allows them to get hit and knows what it like to get, the muscle memory of falling back down to the ground. That's the one thing that does not happen in preseason, especially in practice, because one, the Eagles haven't tackled at all in any of the practices. They haven't brought anybody down to the ground. And two, the quarterbacks never get touched because they're redshirted. So ultimately, that's the only reason on why I would say the quarterback should get some reps. They can get used to getting hit again. That's the only reason on why I would say it may be worth it for a quarterback to get there. However, then you go on the opposite side of things and say, well, I don't want him getting hit because what happens if that hit causes an injury? Now I've lost my guy for a worthless play when I've got 17 games that matter. I played him in the one game that doesn't matter, and he got hurt.
Yeah, I remember in the old days, Joe Namath in the preseason game against the Lions threw an interception, tried to make a tackle, got injured, was out for the year.
Right.
Okay, so you'd never know. But in some cases, the preseason game is big. Like in the case of the Steelers quarterback situation, Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett are all supposedly vying for the starting position, even though it looks like it's Mitch Trubisky's job, just based on Mike Tomlin said his words. Even though he says anyone can win it, he said that Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph are making his decision very tough. Why didn't he say Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph are making his decision tough? So that's kind of revealing. And they got Trubisky to start at least this year. But then again, they drafted Kenny Pickett with their first round pick. Said they have to be counting on him in the future. And Mason Rudolph, who's been there a few years already, I mean, let's say he outplays both guys. How do you then tell Mitch Trubisky, no, you're sitting behind Mason Rudolph? And the number one pick, Kenny Pickett, you could have him sit for now. He's a rookie. It's understood. But that's revealing. I think Mike Tomlin is just saying the politically correct thing. I think he's a great coach, one I respect enormously. But I would love to see Mason Rudolph light it up, completely outplay those two guys. And then Mike Tomlin has the decision of his life, figuring, I'm going to be starting the quarterback who's been here all along, and I went out and got two others. That would be fun to see.
Yes, I agree. However, that ain't going to happen. Mitch Trubisky is going to be underneath the center when it comes to the start. But there was a rankings that came out. Justin Boone and was getting, he's more of a fantasy football guy, but he went ahead and ranked all 32 offensive lines. And I'm going to stop with the bottom 5, and then we'll go to the top 5. Number 32 on this list, the Chicago Bears.
Well, Justin Fields, I'll tell you, what did he get sacked 11 times or something in a game last year? Fortunately, Justin Fields is a very mobile quarterback, but a young quarterback can't grow without a good offensive line. And Justin Fields himself isn't that optimistic. And when you come from a big program, Ohio State, to, the Bears, it's difficult. I'll try to keep it short and not vent, about offensive lines.
Seattle. It's 31.
Geno Smith is the sacrificial lamb, I guess, over Drew Lock. They did draft Cross from Mississippi with the 9th overall pick in offensive lineman. So, that should help.
Yep, and he's going to be left tackle. He's actually listed as their starter, so he should actually give a little bit of help, but they're still a ways away yet. Number 30 on the list, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the Pittsburgh Steelers had a terrible offensive line last year, and if it wasn't for Ben being able to actually have a pretty good middle of the season, towards the end of the season, I didn't think he was that great, but in the middle of the season, he actually was able to, give them wins in spite of their offensive line. But number 30, I don't know that anybody. It's not going to matter who's the quarterback of that. They're going to be sacked a lot this year, I think. 29 is the Raiders.
Just about the Steelers, I can't believe Mike Tomlin would ever let the offensive line get to be that poor. And they didn't seem that bad last year because Big Ben wasn't mobile. So I'm surprised that they're rated so low.
Yeah, they didn't have the running game like they did, in previous years either. They've always had a pretty good running attack, and they have not had that. It was more reliant on Ben throwing the ball. And, like I said, he did have a couple of good receivers last year that he don't have now this year. So they don't even have the weapons for whoever decides to win that quarterback, that quarterback challenge over there that Mitch Trubisky's already won. We got the Raiders from Las Vegas at 29. I feel like that Derek Carr, that was the biggest reason why Derek Carr had to do the checkdowns. He was the king of checkdowns last year. So they wound up getting to the playoffs with that bad.
Yeah, well, Josh McDaniel, a new coach. I don't know why they moved on from Rich Bisaccia. The interim coach did a great job. But, we'll see how it plays out. And getting Devontae Adams, I mean, they're going to Derek Carr. Devontae Adams is going to be affected if they can't protect Derek Carr.
I agree. So Devontae and Chandler Jones over there. So he's going to have a couple of guys to go, but they need to get open. You're going to have, if you're going to have that poor offensive line, if it's going to be that porous, it's going, there's going to be problems there, and he's not going to have the time to be able to get the ball out. The Atlanta Falcons are 28th on that list. No real argument there. I think that their offensive line and defensive line stink, and that's why they stink. So I feel that they're not really going anywhere this year, and they're not really, Cordarrelle Patterson's really that entire team, similar to Deebo Samuel in San Francisco. He just doesn't have any of the other players around him to be able to do the things that he needs to do.
I'll tell you, they overachieved going 7-10 last year. I didn't think much of the team. Then they get blown out by the Eagles in the opener
in week one.
And so they rebounded to an extent that they weren't that bad. And I think Marcus Mariota is their quarterback. If I'm not mistaken.
That is also correct.
So it's going to be a long year in Atlanta. Listen, they have the Braves who are World Series champions. So look at it that way.
Yeah. And last that I'm going to put on the back end of this, ranked number 27. The Tennessee Titans. Now, they have Tannehill there, and of course they've got their running back who's going to be coming back, and after his injury.
Yeah. Listen, when you have a great running game like the Titans have, Derrick Henry's not the only good runner on the team. He's a great runner, Derrick Henry, but he was hurt at the end of last year, missed some games, came back to playoffs, wasn't 100%. If he's the same Derrick Henry, it's going to improve the offensive line protecting the quarterback because they're going to have to respect the run. So that's going to help in that sense. And if Robert Butler is correct, word is Malik Willis has been looking good in camp, but I can't imagine him playing ahead of Ryan Tannehill.
Not this year. Not initially. If they come out with a slow start, I would expect that he would come out and play. So let's switch to the top 5 offensive lines, and you could tell me whether you believe it or not. Number 5 on this list, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Well, in Tom we trust. Okay, so they've protected very good for Brady since he's become a Buccaneer, and it's been a priority, and they understand, that. I mean, the Buccaneers' problems really have been in the secondary, for the most part, but they put emphasis on the offensive line. So, that's a good selection.
They're really helped by Tom Brady more than anything else. He threw 731 passes last year, was only sacked up 23 times, which was the best in the NFL.
And he knows how to check off and get, rid of the ball quick. And
that's exactly correct. Number 4, a little bit of a surprise. The Detroit Lions.
The Detroit Lions. I mean, what can I say? I mean, Did you hear the rookie Williams from Alabama? He has Matthew Stafford's number 9. I know I'm going off the rail, but that kind of shocked me because I thought the Lions, maybe they would retire Stafford's number at some point, at least freeze it for now. But they're allowing a number 1 draft choice to get that number, and that wide receiver, Williams, might have a great career. Then it's hard to retire the number for Stafford if that's what they ever wanted to do.
I feel that they were more upset about the fact that there were more people that enjoyed the Super Bowl in Detroit than there was in LA, and that's why they want to be able to move on. They don't want people to think how great Stafford was. They got to get that number back operating good. And if you're going to get somebody to take that number, you better make sure he's going to be a really good player. And they think
they did protect fairly well for Jared Goff last year, as I recall. Maybe I'm wrong on that. The thing that stood out most to me about the NFL season last year was how poor the offensive lines were in general. And I'm just comparing to other teams, okay? I can't say there's one offensive line that's truly was lights out. You get it on the other side of the ball, on the defensive line, like with the LA Rams, where you have a unit that's outstanding. I can't recall one offensive line that I could say, wow, they're really outstanding, like the Hogs with the Redskins. Like, that's like a thing of the past.
Right. No, and I agree, except, I feel that, realistically, that the offensive lines did not get a lot of play last year in the grand scheme of things. But like the best offensive lines, those teams actually won. I would say that Dallas had a really good offensive line.
I look for the Lions to take a leap up this year. I haven't sat down and wrote my predictions, but I think they have a good chance of making the playoffs, having a winning record, actually making the playoffs. And I see them because they lost so many close games last year, and it's hard to believe they're not going to win some of those games this season.
Well, and I'm a big fan of Deuce Staley. He's the assistant head coach over there, and I feel that he is a great rah-rah and player motivator. And their coach is also a really good player motivator. So I feel that Detroit is going to surprise some people. Wouldn't surprise me if they wind up second in that division. Now the problem is that what do you see? Who do you see in the number 1, Minnesota or Green Bay? I think Green Bay takes a step back.
The only thing we know, we're pretty sure about in that division, the Chicago Bears will be by themselves. They're locked for last place. Right. Then between the Packers, Vikings, who knows who's going to beat who out? Green Bay has ironically had a lot of problems on offense. Okay, in this preseason, they're like floundering when they go against their defense during practice. Reportedly, their defense has been dominating their offense. And Aaron Rodgers was asked about it, and he has mixed feelings. He said, he likes it that he has a great defense. They're going to take some pressure off him in the actual games, and he knows they need a great defense to win. But it's been one-sided. The defense has been kicking the rear end of the offense. And Rodgers just wants to level the playing field, kind of like turn things a little with the offense. But I got to believe Rodgers will get the offense in sync, and that's a good sign for Green Bay with their defense.
I agree. I think that just everybody in Green Bay needs to relax, as he said a few years ago. Just relax. We're going to be fine. So, and we'll see. I still don't believe in the Vikings. I feel that they have that with Cousins at the helm, you're not going to win the game.
They have some problems in their secondary, but they drafted Derek Stingley, who was injured in college out a while, but supposedly he's an elite defender if they get him, healthy to play the corner. So, we don't know the Vikings. The Vikings lost a number of games they should have won last year, too, just what I mentioned about the Lions. Some of these divisions, Pags, are so intriguing because we look at the teams and all of them can win and be there, but we know they're not. So to me, if I'm going to have the guts to pick the Lions, let's say go 9-8 even. they've got to get the wins at the expense of somewhere else. And I could see the Bears going 2-15. I could absolutely see the Bears being a train wreck. But who are the Lions going to get wins off at the expense of who? Are the Packers going to only be 10-7? Are the Vikings going to be mediocre again, be 8-9 or 9-8? You know, you kind of like wonder how some of the divisions play out.
I agree. I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't a logjam at 9-8, 8-9. And to be honest, I feel like that division has the most chance, or the biggest chance, to be similar to the NFC East was a couple of years ago and not play very well throughout the entire division. That the entire division is under 500 or right around 500.
Even my Jets, they were 4-13 last year. If the Jets are going to make a leap and beat out one team in the East, let's say the Jets become better. Let's say the Jets really get it together and they go 9-8. It's got to be at the expense of someone else. And I can't see Buffalo having a poor year. I mean, if Buffalo goes 10-7, that's a bad year for them. Right. Buffalo's that good. So who is going to fit? Do we overrate Miami? Is Miami only going to be 7-10, 8-9? That would be a bad year. What about New England? So we keep looking. Who's going to slip amongst the big three? Buffalo, New England, Miami, for the Jets to catch them. Same thing with the race with your Eagles. Everyone is now focusing Philadelphia, Dallas. Those are the two teams they say are going to battle to win the NFC East. But let's say Washington or the Giants leap up, okay, and surprise us. Whose expenses is going to be at? Are we overrating the Eagles? Maybe did they overachieve last year, going 9-8, making a playoff position? They did great last year. So at the Eagles last year, I always throw this at people with a team. Let's say the Eagles had went 7-10 last year. We would have been saying that was a good season. They fooled people. They made some progress. They did a little more winning. And now this season, we think they could have a winning record and even make the playoffs. The Eagles set the bar maybe too quick and too high, by making the playoffs. Now, even if they have the same season this year they had last year, it would be considered a disappointment, the same exact season. But it wouldn't have been considered a disappointment had they been coming off a 7-10 year this year. Then we would have said, oh, they made progress again. We're happy with how the Eagles are trending. The bar set high. The Eagle fans expect to win the division. And if they don't win the darn division, they better be 11-6 and get edged out. That type of scenario.
Right. Well, no, and I agree with that. I have them going 11-6. I also have them going to the NFC Championship game. I feel that this team, I think against Tampa Bay. So that's what I foresee. I can't see past the championship game, which makes me think that the Eagles aren't going to have enough to get over the hump of Tom Brady, and that Tom Brady wins one more, and or at least goes to one more, and then that.
Well,
ends.
let me think. Well, Pax, let me think. Eagle quarterbacks returning to Philadelphia. I think, as I recall, I don't remember the game. Donovan McNabb received a very warm ovation when he returned to Philadelphia, as I recall. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, it was medium warm. I wouldn't say it was hot. I say it was like it wasn't
respectful.
Yes, it was. It was very respectful.
What about Carson Wentz? It's a little unpredictable.
He is not going to get the warm welcome. He is not going to get the warm welcome.
Is he going to get a big
He quit on the team. Donovan McNabb was traded. Carson Wentz quit on the team.
Randall Cunningham, do you recall that he get a nice ovation? Or?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Yeah. So
although
I want to say that he didn't, he came back. He didn't come back with the team. Like, he didn't play against the Eagles. That 15-1 season,
with
the Eagles didn't play.
The Vikings, the 15-1 season.
Correct. So, and then when he came back with Dallas, he didn't play either. So
Okay.
I don't think that he actually had, like, he was on the field, but I don't think that he actually played against the Eagles ever.
But I think because they're both in the NFC East, I think unlike last year, where people didn't in Philadelphia draw comparisons between Hurts and Wentz, because Wentz was with Indianapolis, which was another planet away from the NFC East. Now that they're both in the NFC East, I think people in Philadelphia are gently going to draw comparisons. If Hurts is out playing better than Wentz, that's going to validate the Eagles make the right decision. We're happy. We moved on. If Wentz should somehow regain his early career form as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, let's call him that. That's what he was at one point. Let's give him his due. If he can somehow regain that form and Hurts is merely a satisfactory quarterback, the fans are going to wonder, wow, should we maybe have just stayed the course with this guy and not have brought in Hurts, not drafted Hurts to begin with? We had something special, and for some reason we blew it.
Well, he was 11-2 when he was here in 2017, and of course, like I said, then he got the ACL, and still threw that touchdown pass. So literally, like with the bad ACL, he got that touchdown to take the lead. That's why he got the win, and not for that game. So yes, could we have gotten as far as we did without him? I don't know. I don't know that Foles would have done the same exact thing. Foles came in and he wound up having 2.5 games that he was just lights out, and wind up winning Super Bowl MVP, and the Eagles won their first Super Bowl. So, but you can't take away the fact that Wentz was there, and realistically, he was the MVP of that year. If it wasn't for the fact that Tom Brady also had a pretty good year and he finished the season, because the Eagles won their games without Wentz, and that would have been really that's the big deal there. That had they lost those last 3 games and didn't make the number one, I think Wentz would have been the undecided MVP of that year.
Tell me your opinion. Doug Peterson, the Eagles Super Bowl winning coach. Some people, I should say, wanted to give credit for the Eagles winning the Super Bowl to Frank Reich, the offensive coordinator. But Frank Reich with the Indianapolis Colts, he hasn't really distinguished himself. He couldn't straighten Carson Wentz out. Okay, that was the idea. Now, Doug Peterson goes to the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's their head coach now. He's in a prime position with Trevor Lawrence. But is Doug Peterson going to elevate Jacksonville in the long run? In other words, is he a coach that's a difference maker? Most coaches, I don't think, are difference makers as far as elevating a team. The majority, I mean, they could hold serve, and if the GM gets them the right players, they could win with them. But there are certain elite coaches who could make the players exceed what the roster says it should. Is Doug Peterson that type of coach?
Well, I feel that, so you're asking, I feel like, 2 different questions there. Can he elevate Jacksonville? Yes, there's nowhere to go but up.
Well, yeah.
So that's what I feel with that. Is he going to be able to elevate them to be able to compete in the division? Not this year. I think that they're going to play better, more fundamental ball this year. I think next year we'll be able to really see the fruits of Doug Peterson being there. Very similar than it was in Philadelphia. He took over this team that was 4-12 and wound up being 6-10 with a brand new quarterback. And then the following year, wound up in the playoffs, really winning the Super Bowl. So literally it's, within 2 years' time, he went from the worst coaching hire ever in the National Football League to winning a Super Bowl. So there's that stigma going on. And everybody likes to say that it was Frank Reich. I don't remember Frank Reich winning a playoff since he's left. In fact, he hasn't. They have not won a playoff game, and they've had some pretty good teams over there.
Well, he
Couldn't beat
came close to
Jacksonville when they
getting
needed
fired,
to.
Frank Reich. Indianapolis, they were furious. The Colt organization losing to Jacksonville the last game of the season to miss out on the playoffs. I mean, you just have to beat the Jaguars to get in the playoffs.
And the Jaguars have had their number for the last couple of years. They just can't beat the Jaguars for whatever reason it is. It's like New England playing in Miami.
It's like the Phillies and the Marlins, but the Phillies, I think, have gotten over the hump.
They've gotten over that now, but in previous years, the Marlins would just beat the Phillies nonstop, and it was ridiculous to think that was the case. But like I said, I think that he will elevate this team. I don't know that it's going to be this year. I think it will be. Next year is going to be a better litmus test for him in terms of how he is coaching. Going back to my list here, number 3 on the offensive line, best offensive line in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, well, we're running out of time, but they better invest heavily, and they have in Patrick Mahomes. There's been a big personnel turnover with the Chiefs always. They've really been addressing the offensive line.
Well, exactly, and I feel like that's where they got to really protect. They got to protect Mahomes.
Getting Orlando Brown and all,
and ever since that Super Bowl where where really he shouldn't have even played because he should have been under concussion protocol. That they didn't have it. Number 2 on the list, the Cleveland Browns, which I thought was a little bit of a surprise.
Interesting. I mean, since the days of Joe Thomas, they're Hall of Famer. It's okay, interesting. That's a little bit of, but they got a great running game too with Kareem.
They also have a great running game, and now
games make offensive lines better. Keep that in mind.
Once Deshaun Watson actually does come play for this team, as he's going to be starting for the preseason game, beyond that, it's we'll see what they actually can and can't do with whoever is with Jacoby Brissett running the team in his absence. The number 1 offensive line in the National Football League, the Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Well,
I agree. I agree. I feel like that the offensive line is the best in the league. They had the best running attack last year. They have, really. The one thing that kind of changed last year is that they did have some injuries, and that line didn't play a lot with each other all season. I think if they could remain healthy,
the philosophy, they finally decided to run the darn ball more.
Right. And that they needed to. They needed to start to continue to run the ball more, and they wound up being the best rushing team in the league. So my expectation is that some of that will continue, but now we've got the weapons and the wide receiver position. So as long as we're able to do some blocking, and we just have a really active line, I feel like that between Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, that side of the line has got 700 pounds to it. Isaac Seumalo and Lane Johnson. Lane Johnson has been perennial, one of the best tackles in the league. Isaac Seumalo, I feel like, is the weak link in this, but they also have Dillard to back them up. They've got a couple of other guys that are able to back them up, like Jack Driscoll, Andre Dillard. You're going to be fine there. I think we're going to be fine, and I think that's going to really propel us to be into the playoffs and win the division. So, just my opinion. We're winding out the rest of this here. Do you have anything else to talk about? I know that you were on vacation for a couple of weeks.
We're winding down. I think we were within the last minute of the show or so, and I'm good. It's great to be back, and and as you could tell, I mean, with the NFL season, there's nothing like NFL Sunday, like the game day, and you can't wait for it to begin. It's like an exciting time with the NFL season. Little different sport because only 17 games. So every game, one NFL game is nearly the equivalent of 10 Major League Baseball games, if you want to look at it that way. So much is riding. And when we start the season, there's so much hope that all these teams have. Everyone starts with a clean slate. But of course, it never goes exactly the season the way we think it will with all the teams.
And listen, if it was that simple, we would all already know who the 14 playoff teams are going to be and who's going to win the Super Bowl. That's what makes this league so great, that you can go from worst to first very quickly.
Yeah.
So we'll see how things turn out.
Not right, Pax. I'm a Jet fan, so don't say we don't go from worst to first so quickly.
Well, we'll see if you guys can do it. I don't think so. Not with the Bills in that division. But everybody, thank you so much for hanging with us today. We'll be back tomorrow where we have Byron Williams stopping by and a few others. Keith Engel will stop by as well. It won't just be me and Jack talking back and forth and yelling at each other a little bit. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great Thursday.